Great. So I'll begin by introducing the club to all of you guys. Since you guys are trying to be a part of, wanting to be a part of Think Digital, and you're participating in the recruitment process, it is only fair that you understand what Think Digital stands for and what is our vision. So basically, we are a club for all the people who are excited and curious about technology, who are looking to learn and grow along with the club, along with all of us, right? With a very important emphasis on growth. We aim to help the students find their passion. The passion can be technical field or a non-technical field. It does not matter. We just aim to provide them with the right opportunities to excel in their field of passion. Also, we have a huge network of alumni and mentors who are well settled in tech companies that some of you here might be hoping to join someday. Our network of mentors are always there for us, and they are always there to help us and guide us through our journey, also as a college student and even after college in our professional journey, right? And then one of our very key aims and visions is that we believe that having a good mentor can reduce the time required to learn a new skill. So, for example, if you are trying to learn a new skill, and suppose if you try to do it on your own through YouTube or whatever, means then let us say you'll take about 3 months to learn that particular skill. We at Think Digital believe that if you have a proper mentor who can guide you along your learning path, along your learning journey, then we can reduce that learning time from 3 months to 1 month, right? So that is one of our very key focuses, to provide proper mentorship to all the new joinees who are joining the club. Now, since all of you are interested in the web domain, right? You want to join the web domain of the club. So let me just tell you how things work in the web domain. So after you guys have joined the web domain, you are part of Think Digital now. You have joined the web domain of the club. What will happen is that we'll have regular sessions with all of you guys. We'll give you basically we'll be teaching you the fundamentals of web development and help you grasp the fundamentals of web development and give you some hands-on projects along the way. So after you have you have understood the basics of web development, we'll move on to give you some live projects. So we have collaborations with NGOs like Bhumi. We have made a lot of projects and websites for them. Bhumi is an NGO, if any of you don't know that. So we have made some projects for them. Also, we have many other projects that are ongoing in the web domain. We have Atom Forms, which is a clone of Google Forms. We have Atom project, which is basically a team management project, which members of the web domain have worked on, and hopefully you also will work on after joining the club. So that's how things work in the web domain. Now let me just briefly explain to you how the recruitment process works. Right. So right now you're having this session, which is the recruitment session. You'll understand some of the fundamentals of web development in this session, especially of HTML and CSS. And after the recruitment, after the session, we'll be giving you a task or a mini project, and we'll expect you to complete that particular task in about 3 or 4 days. And after 3 or 4 days, we'll then have one-on-one interviews with all of you who have completed the task. And in that interview, we'll ask you to explain the project that you have done and what was your logic behind the code that you have written, right? So on the basis of that, you'll be evaluated. And then in the third phase of the recruitment process, you'll have again, there will be an interview where you'll be judged on your interpersonal skills and all of that. So it is a 3-phase recruitment process, and after the 3 phases, you'll be selected into the team. Okay, so that was how the recruitment is going to go. Also, one other thing that I need to say is that at the end of today's workshop, we'll also be sharing a link for the resources that will help you do the tasks that we'll be giving you at the end. And so it will be really helpful for you guys, the resources that we'll be sharing. So try and be in the meeting try and be in the meeting till the end, so that you can get access to those resources, as we'll be sharing it only in this Google Meet. And yeah, so that's about it, guys. Also, I don't think there's anything else remaining about the recruitment process. So I'll just introduce your instructor for today's workshop. He is Muazam. He is also a member of the web dev team. He is a very great full stack developer, especially his front end skills are really amazing. Muazam, if you'd like to continue the session from here.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys are doing good. So without wasting any time, let's get started with today's workshop. Uh, as Harshit already mentioned, today's workshop is basically about HTML and CSS. So how many of you guys know HTML and CSS, or HTML, or just HTML? I hope you guys will have studied it in your higher secondary. Okay, cool. So I'm hoping to see some answers in the chat box. I'll be asking some basic questions. I mean, let's just make this session as interactive as possible. So can anyone just tell the full form of HTML?
Hypertext markup language.
You can put it in the chat box. You can put it in the chat box. Okay. Okay. So any answers for what HTML basically is? Okay, that's enough. The definition is done. Any answers for what HTML basically is? Does anyone know what HTML is?
It basically designs the website, but the structure of website depends on it.
Okay. Any other answers?
It is actually a skeleton of a website.
Okay.
So basically, it is
Okay. Let me just take it from here. So basically, HTML is the code that is used to structure a web page and its content. Okay. For example, we can structure the content within paragraphs, divs, bulleted points, images, tables. We can use a lot of stuff, right? So the next question for you guys is HTML a programming language? You can put it in the chat box, just a few of you.
No.
So then what is HTML? Is it a programming language or is it something? Yeah, exactly. So HTML is not a programming language. It is a markup language. Now, markup language is means that it uses tags to define elements within the document. Okay. It contains a series of elements which we enclose or wrap different parts of the content to make them appear in a particular manner. Okay. So yeah, this is the basic definition of HTML. I'm sure everyone is familiar with it. So now the next thing is, this is so this is a simple HTML document. So we'll be explaining each and every tag in a few minutes. We'll start coding together. So this basically, does anyone of you know what this specifies? I'll get to that in a few minutes, but if I can get any answer for this.
It basically defines the version of HTML, like it's HTML5, that's why it's only doctype.html.
Okay. So basically, I'll explain this in a few minutes, but yeah, so this will be a large heading, this will be a smaller heading, and this will be a paragraph, and this is going to be an anchor tag. So if we write something in this and save our file as the .html extension, because HTML files are saved with that extension, and this will be our output. Okay. So now let's get started with CSS. So any answers here? What CSS is?
CSS is a styling language.
It is a cascade styling sheets which is used to style our websites.
Okay, yeah. So CSS basically describes how our HTML elements are to be displayed on the screen, or monitor or anything. Okay, so it is a simple mechanism for there's a simple mechanism for adding styles. We can add font sizes, font style, font color, or background color, spacing, margin, padding, border, and all. Okay. So it basically saves a lot of work. Before CSS, we had to style elements, inside of the HTML only, and it was really difficult to do so. Now, there are basically three types of CSS. We'll be focusing on one, but I'll just give a brief introduction about all three. So first is the inline CSS. Inline CSS is basically written within the element, within each tag. Okay, I'll show that in a few minutes. Then, and the next one is the internal CSS. We mentioned. Any answers for this? Where do we mention the internal CSS? In which part of the document?
Head.
Yeah, in the head tag. Yes, we mentioned it in the head tag. And next is the And next is the external CSS. So we basically create a separate file, save it with the .css extension, and then we link it using the link tag in HTML, and we can write our code in that file. So basically, this is the most preferred way, and we'll be using that today. But I'll show the internal and inline as well. Okay. So I'll just give you a brief introduction of how we write CSS in case you guys are not familiar with it. So basically, CSS styling will consider of these parts. So first will be the selector. So for example, I'll have an h1 tag and I'll have to make its color blue and its font size 12 pixels, as this image is shown here. So basically, first you need to write the selector. Okay. So in case of an h1 tag, you'll have to write h1. In case of a paragraph tag, you'll have to write p, and in case of any other tags, you'll have to write the tag name here. Next, we'll write two curly braces. Then inside of that, we can write infinite number of properties separated by semicolon. Okay, so this is, I just mentioned some basic properties here. This will be the property color, and its value will be blue separated by colon. Okay, so this is one sample declaration. I'm separating these two declarations by a semicolon, and this will be the font size. This will change the font size to basically 12 pixels. Okay, so okay, this is the basic internal and inline CSS. So inline CSS, basically, if this is a sample paragraph tag, it starts here and ends here. So inline CSS, basically, we have to write here. So there are many disadvantages of it. So if you have to make two paragraphs look alike, you'll have to write this again and again. This problem is solved by internal as well as external CSS. So a basic internal CSS is this thing. In the head tag, we'll just have to mention this style element, and inside of that we can write the CSS. Okay, so I hope everyone has downloaded all the files that were mentioned in the document. So let's get started. I hope you guys have these images and a sample CSS text. This is just to save our time. I don't want to waste time in writing all this. Okay, so let's get started then. And I'll how many of you guys are using Atom, and how many of those who are using Atom can put a yes, Atom in the chat box or something. VS Code, for VS Code, it's fine. I just want to know how many of you are using Atom. So it's just two of you, right? Okay. So has everyone installed the live server extension? Or so okay, I'll just show you how you can do that. So here in the extensions tab towards the left, you can search for live server here, live server. I'll explain what this live server does, and you can click on it and click on install. Okay, so it will be enabled globally. So what I'll do is, you can create a new file. You can right click on this section and click on new file, or you can see this icon here, right? You can click on this icon, and I'll create a file with the name of index.html. So be sure that your landing page, which is the page that should be loaded when your website is open, it should have the name as index.html, because this is the common convention. And whenever you open a URL, the web browser basically looks for this page to render first. Okay, now is anyone of you familiar with Emmet? What Emmet basically is? I'll just okay, it's okay if you don't know about it. So Emmet, basically it is a toolkit. With Emmet you can rapidly create your markups. So I'll explain that. Now, instead of writing it line by line, say for example, I'll write this thing, doc type HTML. Instead of that, you can simply press the exclamation mark. You'll get these two things, right? So you can click on the first one, and it will give you a boilerplate HTML code. Sorry. Okay. I hope everyone is able to do this thing. Now, let's get started. I'll explain these tags quickly. So yeah, as someone said that this will basically mention that we are using HTML5. Okay, so the version of HTML is mentioned using this thing. Next, this is the the next tag, that is the HTML language equal to, and basically mentions the language that we're going to use, and it represents the root of an HTML document. Okay, and it is the container of all the HTML elements. Okay, so next is the head tag. So it is the container for all the metadata. What is metadata? Metadata is the data about HTML document, like the document title, character set that we're going to use throughout our website, styles, scripts, and other meta tags like description and all. These tags are not displayed on our website. Okay, So just this document title, I mean, this title is visible on our website. Rest all of the, you cannot see this in the website. Okay. Now let's get started with this meta char set equal to UTF-8. So basically, this specifies the character set for the HTML document, and this UTF-8 covers almost all the characters and symbols in the word. Okay. Next is this thing. You can avoid it if you are not planning to make a website for Internet Explorer which is less than version 9. Okay, so this basically tells your Internet Explorer that how you are going to render the page. Okay, next thing is this viewport. So the width equal to device width basically sets the width of the page to flow to follow screen width of the device. So for example, I'll go back to my browser. So okay, I'll just explain the live server first. So there are two ways you can see your HTML output. So one is you can click on this HTML file. You can do copy path. Okay. When you do copy path, you can go back to your browser and paste the path here, and you'll be able to see a blank document because we haven't written anything yet. Okay. Next alternative is that you can simply open it with live server. So how you can open it with live server is you can simply right click anywhere in the browser, I mean in the VS Code, and you'll be able to see this open with live server thing.
Muazam, can you zoom on the VS Code a bit? It will get
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope this is visible now.
Yes, it's visible, Muazam.
Okay. So the difference between opening an HTML document using its address and the live server is that if you make any changes in the document, so for example, I'll enter hi, I'll save it. I'll go back to my browser. You cannot see the hi here. Why? Because we haven't refreshed the page yet. So I have to refresh the page manually and I'll be able to see the output. But using live server, the page will automatically get reloaded every time we save anything, any changes in the file. So I'll save it and you can see the changes here. Okay. So getting back here now, as mentioned that see, I have installed this extension by which you can see the width of the screen. So basically what this viewport width equal to device width does is it will set the width of our HTML document as 1600. That is the width of my screen. Okay, I'll disable it for now. Yeah. So and the initial scale equal to 1.0, it sets the initial zoom level of the page when the browser loads the page at first. Okay, now this body tag will contain all the elements. Okay, basically this will contain the meta tags and this will contain the rest of the content. Okay, so let's get started. I mean, can anyone answer the question, how many heading tags are available in HTML?
6.
So the HTML tag basically has a starting tag and a closing tag as well, So again, we'll be using the emmet abbreviation here. You don't need to write the tag, I mean the opening bracket and then h1 and then closing bracket. What you can do is you can simply write h1. You'll get h1. You'll get this pop-up. You can click on h1 or simply press enter, and you'll be having this thing. Okay. Now this will basically be heading 1. I'll save this thing and go back to my browser. I'll be able to see this thing. So basically h1 is a block level element. Okay, so does anyone know what a block level element is, or should I explain it? Okay, I'll do that for you. So basically every HTML element has a default value. Okay, it is either a block level element or it is an inline element. So a block level element always starts on a new line. So if I write another h1 tag here, heading, I'll go back to my browser. It will be shown in a new line. Okay, so that is what a block level element basically does. Also, it will take the full width available. So it will take the whole width from the leftmost position to the rightmost position. So it will also have margins. Okay, so you can see that these elements are not overlapping. They'll have margins between them. So can anyone say the examples of block level elements? You can put it in the chat box as well. Pdiv, yeah. So I'll just mention a few. First thing, the most important tag that you'll mostly be using almost in every web page, that is the div tag. And some other examples are address, article, a site, blog quote, hr, li, field set. We'll get to these in a few minutes when we'll be starting our project for today. Now, some examples of the inline elements are, for example, span is an inline element. So if I write span hello, and if I write another span of hello, I'll save it, I'll go back to my browser, and you can see that they didn't take the whole space. Instead, they just are shown in line, okay, in the same line. Now, next thing we'll do is, so I'll just quickly write all the heading tags. So h2 will be for heading 2. I'll copy paste this thing. So in VS Code, basically you don't need to select a line. I mean, I'm not going to select this line, then copy and then paste. You can put the cursor anywhere in the line that you want to copy. So I'll just remove this thing to show it again. I'll put my cursor here or here or here. I'll press Control C, Control V. It will be automatically pasted here. Okay. So I'll press it 6 times. Now, also you can install an extension. You guys can note it down, auto closing tag. Okay, so what auto closing tag basically does is, for example, I have this h1 tag right here. If I change the opening tag, it will automatically change the closing tag as well, so you don't have to change 2 times. Okay, so this will be h3, this will be h4, this will be h5, and this is going to be h6. Also, let's change this thing here, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So as the name suggests, h1 is the largest heading tag, and it goes on till h6. Okay. Now, also I'll like to show you a snippet, emit snippet in a few minutes. Now let's first write an anchor tag. So basically, what an anchor tag does is, it defines a hyperlink, and which is used to link one page to the other. So let's just link this page to www. For example, xyz.com. Okay, and we'll write anything here. So I'll write click here. So I'll go back to my browser now. I'll click on this link, and it will redirect me to www.xyz.com. Okay. Don't forget to mention HTTPS or HTTP depending upon which website you're redirecting it to, and it will, I mean, in case this website exists, now it will redirect me to that page. Okay. Now, next I'll talk about the paragraph tag. So basically, the paragraph p tag, it is called the p tag also. So p tag basically defines the paragraph. Browser automatically adds a single blank line before and after the p tag. So another shortcut, if you want to write any demo, I mean sample text or anything, so what you can do is you can simply write lorem, and after that you'll enter any number. So if I need 10 random words, so I'll write 10 and I'll press enter. I'll get 10 random words. Okay, I'll save this thing. I'll go back to my browser, and I'll be seeing these 10 random characters. Okay, now the next thing, okay, let's talk about, okay, now let's get started with div. So again, if you have to create a div tag, you don't need to write it separately. You can simply write div and press enter. You'll get a div tag. Okay, so again, it is a block level element, so it will be shown in a separate line. So what you can do is, you can I can consider this to be the parent element, and I can create child elements to this div tag. Okay, so okay, I'll show you an example. So in the previous version of HTML, you could have used the I tag to make the text italic. So this will be italic. You can see this is italic, but now you can also use M, that is EM, to make the text italic. Okay. Now I'll create another child to this div, and okay, I'll get to that after this thing. So I can create another subparent to another child, that is, I'll create another div, that is div, and I'll write, for example, strong. So instead of if you have to make your text bold, you can write the strong tag or the B tag. Okay, so this will be, for example, hello world. So can any one of you answer ki ye hello world, will this be in the same line or will it come in the next line?
Next
Considering
line.
that the strong is an inline element. Strong is an inline element. Now, is it going to be in the same line or the next line?
Next line.
Why?
Because the divs are different, right?
Yeah, exactly. So div is basically the parent to it. So div will basically move it to the next line, and then strong will be inline only. Okay. Now, I can obviously create more children to this parent element. So let's create another span element here. Okay, I'll just write span here. Now, can anyone say where this is going to appear? The span, it is an inline element.
Different line.
Huh?
Different line.
Yeah, exactly. Can anyone tell me why it is shown in a different line? Because div was a block
Div
level
is a
element, right?
parent element.
Yeah. No, not because div is the parent element, but because before the span element, we have a div tag, right? So div will basically occupy all the space that is available to it. Okay. So this hello world will basically occupy all the space from the leftmost position to the rightmost position. So the span will have to show in a new line. Okay. So, okay, I've explained the, okay, now let's get started with the list. So we basically have two types of list in HTML. First is the UL, that stands for unordered list. So in the unordered list, if you want to mention these elements, you can use the li tag for that. That is list item. Okay, you can write list item 1. Similarly, I'll copy paste this thing and I'll show you a shortcut for that as well. And I'll go back to the browser. Now you can see I have an unordered list with 3 elements. If I change this to ordered list, now I'll have 1, 2, 3 instead of those dots. Okay, but okay, I'll create an unordered list as well. Okay, now what if your list is going to have, I mean, 10 elements? You're not going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can use the emmet abbreviation for that as well. So you guys can note it down somewhere. It is, see, if you have to create a parent and a child, how you are going to do is, for example, I need to create a div and its child should be a span. So I'll write the greater than symbol and I'll write span. Okay, I'll press enter. Now I'll get a div whose child is a span. Now, obviously it is not limited to this much only. You can create a div with a span as its child, which should have, for example, UL as its child. Yani span ke under there will be a unordered list. So as you can see, now it will show like this. Now, if you're wondering how my code is getting changed when I'm saving the file, I've used the Prettier extension. You can download that as well. So what Prettier basically does is, you can see it. I'll just show you. If it was like this, or okay, it didn't work. I'll show you. If I enter a UL tag, then li, and then I'll write item 1. If I save this thing, it will automatically be shown in the new line so that the code is more readable. Okay. Now,
could you repeat the name of the extension you were saying?
Prettier. If you want, we can share the link later, but you can go to the extensions tab and write Prettier. And the first one is the extension that does this thing. Okay. If you face any issues, you can later, inform us. We'll help you with that. Okay. So now the shortcut for this thing, right? I mean, this was too lengthy to write. So if my UL has, for example, 10 elements, I'm not going to write them one by one. Okay, that will waste a lot of time. So what you can do is have a look, please. See, UL greater than. Now, how many LIs do I need? Anyone can give me a number, a random number? LI. How many LIs should I?
5.
5. Okay. So I'll write asterisk 5. This is going to give me a UL who will have 5 child li elements. Okay, I'll press enter. Now I'll have a UL with 5 li child elements. Okay, but again, then I'll have to write list item 1, list item 2, list item 3. There's a shortcut for that as well. What it is as follows: li into 5. Okay, then what you'll do is, for example, I want a list item 1, 2, 3, 4, inside of my li. So okay, first I'll explain the what the curly brackets do. So if I need a p tag and it's inside of it I need a span tag which should have hello world inside of it. So I'll basically write p greater than span. So p element will be created, inside of it I'll be able to see a span, and when I write these curly brackets, so anything inside of this thing will be shown inside of that. Okay, so I'll press enter. Now I'll get a p tag and it will have a span inside of it with the text hello world. But you can control the count as well. So how we'll do that is ul li into 5. Next you'll do you'll press the curly brackets, then you'll do list item dollar. Okay, now I'll press enter. I'll get this thing. So I'll have list item 1, list item 2, list item 3, list item 4, and list item 5. Dollar will automatically handle that. Okay, so in order to, I mean, do you guys know what comments are? So comments are which are I mean for the user only. So this code which I've written here is for the browser to render. Okay, but what if you want to show something to the user only? So you can create a comment. A comment is created using control plus slash. Okay, control plus slash. When I will click, it will give me this this thing, and I can write anything inside of it. For example, hello world. I'll save it, and I'll not be able to see this thing in the browser because it is a comment. It is only limited to the user. Okay, the browser will not be able to render this thing. Okay, so I'll write this snippet here, which I just showed. So li list into 5 and curly brackets. I'll write list item dollar. Okay, this you can write to get this unordered list with the 5 list items, each with this text. Okay, now next thing, for example, I'll have to style this paragraph tag. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the inline CSS for now. So I'll write style, I'll press enter. So its format is style equal to, and then double quotes. Inside of double quotes I can mention any property. So color, for example, color will be through aqua. I'll save it. Now you can see the paragraph tag will have the color aqua. Okay, but what if I had, for example, another p tag lorem 10? I'll have to what if I needed both these paragraph tags to have the color aqua? I'll have to write this thing again, right? But that's not a good practice. So we're not going to use inline CSS here. What I'll do is inside of my head tag, I'll create a new element that is style. Okay, now inside of style you can simply, can anyone see how I'm going to style the p tag here? If I want to style all the p tags that are available on my website, how I'm going to style them here? I'll write p, then
curly braces.
No, curly braces. Yeah, curly braces, and then I'll mention the property. So for example, color, I'll set it to aqua. Okay, I'll save it. Now you can see both my paragraph tags are having the color of aqua. Okay, but now what if you just wanted one or maybe okay, I'll create a few more paragraph tags. What if I wanted this and maybe the fourth one to be aqua, rest shouldn't be aqua? Okay, how I'm going to do that is the concept of classes and IDs comes into place. So the HTML ID, can you guys mute? Someone has unmuted his mic. So the HTML ID attribute is used to specify a unique ID for an HTML element. Now IDs are unique. Okay, so ID, I'll mention an ID to this paragraph tag. I'll name it as anything, for example, para. Okay, so ID has to be unique. Two elements cannot have the same ID. Now what if you have to, I mean, style the second and the fourth paragraph? Now what I'm going to do is, in this case, I'll have to write class. Okay, so for example, I mentioned a class to this paragraph ID, sorry, paragraph, and I'll mention the same class here as well. Now how I'm going to access the ID and the class in the CSS is, to access an ID, you'll simply have to write hash and the name of the ID. So I named it as para. Okay, so hash para. Now I'll do color red. I'll remove this thing for now. So only the paragraph which has the ID of para will be red now. Okay, as you can see, it is red now. going back to the terminal, sorry, the VS Code. Now, for example, I want the color of these two paragraphs to be green. So how I'm going to do that is I'll just write dot para and I'll set the color to green. Now, as you can see, so IDs are unique. Classes can be used for multiple elements. And now all the elements which have the class of para will be green.
It should be dot item.
Sorry, it is the item, sorry. Now you can see these two paragraphs had the class of item, they are green now. Now, for example, if I add this class to this element as well, so item, now this is going to be green as well, right? You can see this is green as well. But what if you wanted all the paragraphs which have the class of item to turn green? How will we do that? Is by simply mentioning p dot class name, that is p dot item in our case. So all the p tags which have the class of item should turn green. Now if for example my m tag also has a class of item, but only those which only those p tags which have the class of item will turn green. Now I'll go back to my browser. Now you can see that this italic is not green. Okay, that is okay. So I hope you guys have understood the difference between an ID and a class. Now next thing we'll do is I'll talk about the parent and children now. So what you can do is in this div tag, in order to separate this div tag from other div tags, you can add a class here. I'll just add a class of, for example, children, and to this, sorry, parent, I'll add this because this is going to be the parent div, and I'll add a class of child to this div. Now, what is the use of these is if you want to target all the span tags which are inside of this div, how will we do that? Is by simply mentioning the parent class first or the parent element. But in our case, we have mentioned the class. So the class of this div is parent. So I'll write dot parent and then span. So this styling will be applied on all the span elements which are inside of this class. Okay. So let's do font size 20 pixels. Now you can see the font size of these span elements has changed. Okay. Now I'll just talk about a few more parent-child properties. First, I'll talk about three operators, I'd say. First is the direct child, that is dot, for example, dot child. See, what this will basically do is it will select the first span element that is placed immediately after this thing. Don't worry, you'll understand this thing. So if I do dot child plus span, so let's find our dot child class. So this is our dot child class. So what this plus operator specifies is the span that is immediately after this dot child class should, for example, change its color to pink. Now you can see this was the immediate span tag after our dot item, sorry, dot I forgot the name, dot child. So CSS got applied on that only. Okay. Now the next thing is I'll talk about another one. For example, if I had to select, let's do, for example, if I had to select this M tag, okay, how I can do that is, this is for complex CSS. You don't need to use this now. Later you'll get familiar with these things. Okay, so let's get started with the direct child element. So for example, I'll do dot child. For this you'll have to use the greater than symbol, and then I'll do M. I'll set the font weight. So this is the thickness of the font. I'll set it to 900. Now this will apply on all those M elements which are a direct child of the child class. So instead of M, I'll write strong because our child has this, our child class has this as its children. So every strong element which is a direct child of dot child class will have their font weight as 900. So I'll go back to my browser. Now you can see it, the font is okay. So, sorry, it already had a 900 font, so I'll change it to M instead of strong. Also, I'll have to change here, and you can see the font. Okay, in case it is not visible, I'll change the font size as well. Font size, I'll set it to 30 pixels. Now you can see this dot child class has this element as its direct children. Now, what is a direct children? I'll show you. For example, I'll create another div here with a class name of, for example, subchild. Okay. Now, how you can do that is you can simply write div. Okay. Then if you have to add a class, you'll write dot. If you have to add a class, you'll write hash. So I need to add a class, so I'll write dot sub hyphen child. I'll press enter. I'll have a div with the class of subchild. Okay. Now, if I write an M tag here as well, I'll write the text inside of it. Now you can see the by is not having these styles जो इस वाले में था, right? Why? Because it is not a direct child of this thing. It has another parent and it is a child of this parent, right? So if it is a direct child, then the CSS will apply, else it will not apply. So if I create another M here, I'll write SRM inside of it. It will show that CSS because it is a direct child of this class, right? Okay. So do you guys have any doubts till now? Should I explain anything again?
No.
Okay. I'll just check the chat box as well. So now let's get started with, I'll create a sample CSS file here. Now, how I can create a new file is I'll simply click on this plus icon and I'll write, for example, style.css. And let's just copy paste our CSS to there instead of here. I'll cut it, I'll paste it here. I can remove the style tag from here. Now, in order to link this file with the HTML file, what you can do is you can simply write link, press enter. Rel equal to style sheet basically means that this whatever file we're linking here is going to be the style or the CSS file of this HTML document. Now you need to write the address of that file, so it will be style.css. I'll go back to my browser and you can see the changes are still there. Okay. Now let's talk about a few more things. So here I'll create, for example, a p tag. I'll just keep one p tag here. Now what I'll do is I'll change the lorem 10 to lorem 100 so that I can show you this CSS, this cool CSS property. Okay. I'll go back to my browser first to check if it's working. Yeah, it is working. Now what I can do is here I can remove this thing because we're not using it anymore. So I'll do p and I can use a pseudo class here, that is colon. I'll use 2 colons and then I'll do first letter. I'll change its font size to 200%. Now you can see the first letter of this paragraph tag will have a font size of 200%. Now what does percent mean? If this has, for example, 12 pixels font, this will have 24 pixels. Okay. Also, we can use another CSS property, that is first line. It is also a pseudo class. I'll get to the pseudo classes and pseudo elements in a few minutes. I'll change its color to green. Now you can see the first line of our p tag will be green. Okay, these are some of the CSS classes. The CSS is quite vast, so we cannot cover all of this in a single lecture. Okay, now so if you guys have no doubts in this thing, I'll get started with today's main topic, that is we're going to make this Instagram login page clone. Okay, so do you guys want to copy anything or should I get started? Can you put a yes or no in the chat box? Am I audible? Okay, cool.
Yes, we are audible.
Okay. Now, if you guys don't want to copy this thing, I'll just remove both of these sample files. Okay. Now let's get started. We'll again. Okay. Let's create. Let's get the boilerplate HTML code. Now, what I'll do. I didn't explain you this title part. So if I save this thing, I'll go back to the browser now. You can see the document appears here, right? The document. This is called the title. So if I change it, if I name it as Instagram, now you can see Instagram will be shown here. So first things first, I hope everyone has opened, saved all the files that were in the Google Drive in a particular folder and opened that folder in the VS Code. In order to access these images, you need to do that. Okay. Now, the first thing I'll do is I'll create an icon. See, in the browser for this Instagram page, you can see an Instagram icon here, right? We don't have it here, so let's do it. For that, what you have to do is you'll have to create another link tag, but instead of style sheet, what you have to do is you have to mention icon here. Okay, so icon, because this is going to be the icon for our website. You can also mention the type. So our type will be image/png because we're using a png image, and in the href you'll have to mention the address of that image. So for me it is logo.png. Okay, I'll save it. I'll go back to my browser. Now you can see the Instagram logo is shown here. Okay, so next thing, I'll also link the CSS here. So it will be style.css. And have you, okay, I'll show you. You can go to this website, fonts.google.com. Someone can put it in the chat box. And I'll show you two methods of importing fonts from this website. Okay, so you can either use the link tag to import fonts, or you can use the import in CSS, okay, to import the font. Now, basically, we'll be importing some random fonts. Okay, so you can search for lobster, for example. Lobster, I'll search. I'll click on it. I'll select, for example, this style, and then I'll have a link here. As you can see, I'll have a link here. I'll copy it. I'll copy the whole of it. I'll put it in the link tag. Okay, that is one way of using the font. I'll remove it for now because I don't need it. But another way is to use the import. So you can click on import and you'll be having this URL. So you don't need to copy this style style element because we are using external CSS. This is for internal CSS. So you can copy this thing and paste it in your CSS. Okay, I'll mention in a few minutes that which font we're going to use, and we'll import it together. Okay, now let's get started with the clone. So also
I guess I missed. Could you show how you're getting the boiler code?
You can, okay, I'll just cut it out for now. You can write the exclamation mark and you'll get to see these two things, right? This will just give you the doc type. If you write it 3 times, you'll get this thing, but if you write it 1 time and press enter, you'll get the boilerplate code. Okay, so moving further, basically you can see that we'll be needing some fonts here. See, for example, this Facebook icon is icons here. So in order to use these icons, what you can do is you can go to font awesome CDN. Okay, then you can go to, don't worry, I'll put this link in the chat box as well. And here you need to copy this link. I'll put it in the chat box. You can copy this link and put it in your head tag. Okay, so I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code and I'll paste it here. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is we'll, in the main body, now I'm going to use Flexbox. So basically what Flexbox is, it is a one-dimensional layout system. Okay, so in order to style your website and make it responsive, you need to use Flexbox. So Flexbox basically is a one-dimensional layout method used to align items in either rows, that is in the horizontal direction, or columns, that is the vertical direction. So basically, in order to use Flexbox, you'll have to create a Flex container, which should have its display property to either Flex or inline Flex. Now, what I'll do is I'll create a container class. So dot container, this will give me a div with the class of container. And I'll show you by creating two more divs. That is, for example, call, and let's write hello. And I'll create another call. Call basically stands for column. Okay. Now I'll write by instead of hello. I'll save it. I'll go to my CSS. Now, before writing any CSS, you'll have to reset the properties. Okay, reset the. See, I'll show you which properties are. See, you can see the margin here, right? There is a little bit of margin before and on top of these elements. Now, in order to remove that, we'll have to use the global selector, that is asterisk. Instead of asterisk, we'll write margin 0. Now, the shorthand or the emit abbreviation for using CSS is you can write M0, you'll get margin 0. If you write P0, you'll get padding 0, and you'll have to write box sizing, and I'll set it to border box. I'll explain what these three do. Okay. So now you can see that there is no extra margin, so this will not affect our CSS anymore. Next thing I'll do is I'll import the Roboto font from the Google fonts. Okay, so fonts.google.com, I'll go there, I'll write Roboto here. You can select all the styles that you need. So basically I'll just select maybe 100, 300, and let's go for 400 and 500 as well. Okay, now I'll go to this import. I'll copy the import link, and I'll come back to the VS Code and I'll paste it on top. Okay, so now how are we going? The import is done successfully. Now the question is how we are going to use this font. Okay, so you can just scroll down a bit and you'll see the font family property of CSS here, and you simply can copy and paste it here. Okay, so I'll create another tag, that is body selector. This will apply for the whole of the body. Now if I save it and I'll go back to my browser, now you can see the font has changed slightly, right? So now let's get started with Flexbox quickly. So what I'll do is, as I said, that Flexbox, in order to create a Flexbox, you'll have to create a parent class or the Flex container, which should have its display property as Flex. Now, if I do display Flex, you can see that the elements are aligned in this, are shown in rows, right? That is in the horizontal direction. Now, if I wanted to show them in a different direction, I'll do Flex direction and I'll set it to column. Now they'll be shown in the columns. Okay, so if I copy paste these divs, it will I'll just change it to row. The default Flex direction is row. Okay, so it will be shown like this. Next thing you can do is you can just write justify content center. Okay, if I do justify content center, it will align all my columns or my Flex elements to the center. Okay, next thing you can do is, for example, these are sticking together, right? But if I want to create a gap between these, so in the latest version of CSS, you can use the gap property. I'll write, for example, gap 20 pixels. Now you can see a 20 pixel gap on each side of the Flex elements. Okay, also additionally, what you can do is, for example, you might have seen this, that people find it difficult to center a div in the page, right? So if you have to center it horizontally, you'll use this property, justify content center. If you have to align it vertically, you'll have to use align items center. But this will only work when you're see, for now it will not bring any changes to our code because my Flex container is only having this much height, right? So it is aligning it at the center of that thing. But for example, if I want to make my container cover the whole height of the document, what I can do is I can do minimum height. The shorthand for that is min height. Okay, so I'll do min height 100 VH. Now what does VH stand for? It is viewports height. Okay, so basically viewport is the whole HTML document, and 100 viewport means 100% of this HTML document. So now my container will have a height of 100 view heights. Okay, now you can see the items are in the center. Let's keep it as 90. I'll explain why we're keeping it as 90, because this is going to be our Flex container. this is going to be our footer. So if this covers 90% of the initial screen, this will cover the rest of it. Okay, so what we can do is we can create two columns. First we'll have this image, and the next one will have this whole thing, right? So this will be one column, this will be the other column, and then in this column we can simply place an image and style it a bit, make it responsive. Okay, and in this column then we'll create another div which will have this box. I'm explaining the uh, uh, the structure of our HTML document. I'll create another div which will have this box. I'll create another div which will have this box, and similarly for this thing, and I'll have these two images as well. Okay, now without wasting any time, let's get started. I'll remove these sample columns that I just created. Now in order to add multiple, you can add multiple classes as well, but ID cannot be multiple. Okay, they can only be one ID to a particular document. So I'll create one column. Okay, and inside of it I'll put my image. So img is the tag for using an image. It is a self-closing tag, which means it only has an opening tag and it does not have a closing tag. Okay, so image, and in the src thing we'll write the address of our image. So it is going to be image.png, and in the alt, this is the alternate tag. So in case the image was unable to load, or it was not found in your for file structure, you can write, for example, Instagram phone as a. Okay, I'll save it. I'll be able to see the image in the center of the page. Why? Because we use the flex box thing, right? So you can either right click on your page and go to inspect to inspect your document, but alternatively you can click on F12 key. You can press the F12 key, and then you'll see an arrow here. Now if I hover over this thing, or if I hover over this container, you can see that it is covering 90% of the screen width, right? You can see the 10 view heights is left open, and the 90% of it is getting covered. Okay, now I'll close the inspect tools for now because I don't need them, and what I'll do is, if I write the address of an image which does not exist in my folder, I'll save it. Now you can see the alternate text will be shown here. Okay, so if your image is not displayed, the alternate text can be shown, and it is important to mention this because the user should know that the image was unable to load. Okay, so I'll add another class of image to this thing for styling purposes to differentiate this column from the second column that I'll create. So for example, I'll create another column. Now, in order to differentiate between these two columns, what I'm going to do is I'll add another class of image to this thing and another class of content to this thing. Okay, now how you are going to add multiple classes using meta abbreviation is, you can simply write dot all dot image. Okay, without any spaces. You'll press enter, you'll get a div with two classes, that is call and image. Okay, so next thing I'll do is, so I'll go back here. Now what I'm planning is, let's keep this box inside of another div. So let's create another div with the class of box. So dot box, I'll press enter, I'll have another div. Now I have this image, right? This is an Instagram image. So basically this could have been a text as well, but this font is not available in the market for free, so we're using an image instead of that. Now what I'll do is, inside of this box I'll create another div. So it is a good practice to keep your elements inside of their separate divs, okay, or any other element that you feel like. So I'll create another image tag, and the name of it is logo name. I hope everyone has downloaded the image. I'll enter the alternate text as, for example, logo name. Okay, going back to the browser, I'll be able to see these two images. So obviously they'll be of the size that of the actual size. Now we'll be styling them and making them of suitable size. Before doing that, let's create another form which will have basically these input elements. So this will be one input element, this will be another input element, and this will be a button, and then we'll continue building this thing. Okay, so what I'll do is, after this div of title, I'll create another form. So basically why I created a div for this image is because img is an inline element, so it will not be shown in a separate space. So that's why I wrapped it inside of a div. Now what I'll do is I'll create a form with the class of login form. This is for styling purposes. You can remove the action attribute for now because will not be using that in this case, as it is just for HTML and CSS. Now I'll create another div with the class of form content. It should have an input of type text, and it will also have label. So you can use the plus operator as well to if you need to write two elements. So as you can see, wait, I'll just okay, I'll show it one by one. So the input tag, let's get started with the input elements. Okay, now basically input tag is nothing but this thing. So wherever you enter any input, it will basically take your input. Okay, so I can enter anything. It has many types, so I'll just clear this thing out. It has a type of text, it has a type of email, and how you can see that is if you enter type, and you'll get to see all these. So there's button, checkbox, color, date time. Okay, but we'll only be working with text and password for now. So here I'll enter text. Next, you can pass in a new attribute, that is placeholder. So I'll go to the Instagram page. So this is going to be the placeholder. Okay, phone number, username, or email. This is going to be the placeholder. Now, for example, I'll enter phone number for now. I'm using a different concept, so I'll just write phone number. Now you can see this input will have a phone number shown here, but obviously when you enter anything, it will be disappeared, and if you clear everything out, it will be shown again. That is what placeholder is. Okay. Now I'll remove the placeholder for now because we'll be adding this. We'll be adding this thing. So for example, if I enter anything, you can see that the placeholder didn't actually disappear. It just translated a bit towards the top, and if I remove anything, it will be it's shown here again. Okay, so in order to add this animation, what I'll do is I'll, instead of placeholder, I'll just give it a name of username, and I'll keep it as required. Okay, so basically when you submit a form, if any required field has been left as empty, the form will not be able to submit. Okay, now in order to handle that thing, I'll create another tag, that is label. For basically in this for, you'll have to pass the name of the input tag that you just created. I'll pass in as uname. Okay, now this it will have the phone number, comma, username, or email. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll not write it again, I'll just copy and paste it. But the difference is going to be, instead of text, we'll have something called password. I'll show the difference between a text and a password, and this will have a name of password as well, and this will be label for password. And instead of this thing, I'll simply write password. I'll save it. I'll go back to my browser. Now you can see I have an input tag, I have this label. Now using CSS will make it look like this, and I have the password. So the difference between a normal text field and a password field is the password field is shown like this. Okay, and okay, now the next thing that we're going to use is this button. Okay, now let's create a new element that is going to be our button. Now what I'll do is I'll create another div dot form content, and I'll create a button. So button, I'll write button, I'll press enter, I'll have this button, and I'll write login inside of it. Now inside of a form, if you're mentioning a button, you need to mention its type so that the form should know that when you click on this button, the form should get submitted. So I'll write the type as submit. Now I have this button here, which will basically submit the form, but because our input fields are required, it is asking me to fill in these things. Okay, so as you can see, it is I have tried to log in with some username and password, so it is giving me these suggestions. But if you want to hide these, what you can do is you can do autocomplete equal to off. Sorry, autocomplete equal to Okay, I'll just get back to that. Okay, so if you set the autocomplete property to disable, and then it will not show you these suggestions. Okay, now next thing I'll do is I'll create another. See, now we have our main box, we have our input for email, phone number, or username, we have our input for the password, I have my login button as well. Now I need to create this or field here, then I'll have an icon and it will read out as login with Facebook, and I'll have a forgot password link. Okay, now let's make this thing, then we'll have a short break and we'll continue doing the CSS after that. Okay, so now what I'll do is, yeah, you can name it as anything, but I'll name it as form ending maybe, because it is the end of the form. And you can use in order to align align something horizontally, you can use an HTML element that is center. So if I write center and then I, for example, write P, I'll create a P tag. I'll keep its ID as or. Let's try to use almost all the elements that we went through. So or, and I'll create a span with the ID of line. Okay. Now I'll go back to the browser. Now you can see I have a P. It is in the center of the parent element. So its parent element is basically this much only. The second column, the first column is only this much, and the second column is this thing. It is in the center of that thing. Okay. So line will not be visible yet because we'll create that line using CSS. So after that, we'll style it properly and it will be shown here. Okay. So next thing, basically this box is done. Now we just have to create this box and then these two images and get the app. Okay. How I'll do that is after this div. So be sure to include everything inside of this container class so that flex should apply on all those containers. So I'll skip the last closing div because that is for the container. And instead of that, what I'll do is I'll create a mini box, maybe mini box. Inside of that, I'll create a div with the class of text, which will have the following text: don't have an account. Then it will have an anchor tag. So if you want your anchor tag, if you don't want your anchor tag to redirect to another page, you can simply put a hash in there for temporary purposes. Okay, and I'll write sign up here. Yeah, sure, I'll zoom in.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll zoom in. Now you can see I have my this thing here, and the sign up thing is also visible. Next thing, I'll just zoom in. I hope this is visible now. Okay, we're almost done with the HTML part. Just we have to. Oh, I guess I forgot something, right? I forgot the login with Facebook. So what I'll do is after. I forgot these two things. So what I'll do is I'll create a P with the ID of Facebook. I'll create a paragraph tag with the ID of Facebook. Now, as I hope everyone has imported the font awesome library that I put in the chat box. Now, how you can use a font is you can use the I tag, I, with the class of, for example, in our case, I'll be using class name of fab, FA, Facebook, square. Don't worry, you don't have to remember these things. I'll just show you how you're gonna use the different icons that are available on Font Awesome. Now I'll fast square. Wait, it is not visible yet.
Spelling of square.
Oh, sorry. Now you can see a Facebook icon here. Now you can obviously use a lot of icons that are on their website. So I'll go to fontawesome.com. Here you can search for example, in our case, I need the Facebook icon. So I'll search for Facebook and it will show me these icons. So if it is it is having this color, which means it is for pro accounts only, so you cannot use these icons, but I need this one, so I'll click on it. It will redirect me to another page, and I'll be able to copy this thing from here. Okay, so if I copy this thing here, I'll go back to my VS Code. I'll just paste it. Okay, next thing I'll do is what is left is we have to write this forgot password. Okay, so this will be again an anchor tag. So href will be hash because I don't want to redirect to any other page for now, and I'll write forgot password. Okay, now only this part is left, these two images and this text, so we'll do that quickly, and that will be the HTML part will be completed. Okay, so I'll name it maybe as download section because it will basically download the application. So I'll create a p tag with get the app, and I'll create another div. Why I'll create a div is because I need these images in a separate line, and I want them in a single line. So I'll create another div with the class of images. I'll write img. First will be app store.png. Alternate will be anything, for example as for app store, and another img tag for play store. Okay, now I should be seeing these two images as well. I'm seeing this get the app, I'm seeing everything. So that is it for a HTML part. Also we'll create this footer. So I've already sent you a txt file in the Google Drive, right? So what you can do is you can simply copy paste that and paste it here. If you because this will save us a lot of time. I'll explain it, no doubt I'll explain it step by step, but you can just copy paste this thing in your CSS file. Now what I want you guys to do is I'm sharing a text. Give me a minute. I'll share, because why I'm sharing this with you guys is because we're not going to write all these languages which are provided here one by one, because that will take a lot of time. I'll just share the text with you guys. So you can go to this URL and copy paste the code for this, and I'll go through it quickly. Okay. You can go to this URL and copy the text from there, and you can simply paste it after your container div. Okay, so after your container div, what I'll do is I'll go here, I'll copy paste that after, I mean before the body tag I have to paste it. Okay, before the body tag I'll have to paste it. So before the body tag I'll paste it. I'll save this thing. I'll go back to my browser to check if it is working. So yeah, it is working, because the styling will be applied on it, because in the css.txt file that I shared, it the styling for this code is already mentioned. I'll go through that quickly, but let's get I mean, I'll just introduce you to this new HTML element, that is select. Now basically what this select thing does is, if you create a select element, and then you'll have to pass these options for all the options. So the first option will be shown here by default. So if I change this to, for example, English, save it, I'll go back to my browser, and you can see the English will be on top, but I'll just let it be as it is on the Instagram page. So on top there is this language. Okay, so I've simply just used the Instagram code from their website only, because I didn't want to write all these languages one by one. So I hope this is clear. That is all for our HTML part. Okay guys, so let's continue building our node. Now you can go back to your style.css. Now we'll be writing all the CSS required for our clone. I'll skip the footer part, and I'll skip the footer part for now because I'll be getting to that at the end. Okay, so now, for example, if I'll have to, can anyone confirm, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, so first things first, let's first style the image. So how I'm going to style this image is, I'll use the parent-child classes. That the parent is the container, then we have the column, then just a second now, I'll just open this thing. Okay, so it is dot container dot call, and then we have the image. I can do dot image instead of dot call. So for example, we don't need to style this image because it is having the proper height and width, but I'll just show you how we can change the height and width of the image. So for example, I'll do width and I'll set it to 100 pixels. I'll go back to my browser. Now you can see the image width is 100 pixels only, and the height is adjusted automatically. Okay, but in case of Safari, probably this is not going to work because it will uh, change. It will not change the height. The height will be the initial height, and the width will be 100 pixels. So what you can do is you can, for example, do height and set it to auto, so it will automatically adjust the height as well. Okay, but we don't need to style this because it is of the perfect size. Okay, so now first things first, let's style the box. So I want to style this box. Now how I'm going to do that is I do dot container dot call dot box. So this is the parent, this is the sub parent, and this is the element that we are trying to style. You just keep on copying these values. Okay, so the width will be 350 pixels. Now I've approximated the heights and width using the inspect tool. So what you can do is here in the Instagram page, you can go to the inspect element, you can click on this icon over there, then you can just hover over this box. Okay, when you hover over this box, on top you can see the height and the width of the box as well. So I've approximated these values and I'm using them in our project. Okay, so I'll set the width to 350 pixels and height to 380 pixels. Okay, next thing I'll do is I'll add a border. So how do we add a border is I'll do border, then it takes in three things. First is the width of the border. So let's assume that it has a 1 pixel width border. Next is the type of the border. So it can be solid, it can be dashed, or there are many properties. So we'll simply write solid, and then it will take the color. So if I do blue, so now I have this box. The image is basically overlapping with that box. What I can do is I can use the overflow property here. So I'll set the overflow to hidden. Now whatever is inside the dot box class, that will be hidden. Okay, if it is overflowing. Next thing, I'll just comment it out. So in order to comment a particular line, you don't need to select it and write slash asterisk and on both sides. What you can do is, for example, I want to comment out this line. I'll place my cursor anywhere in that line, and I'll click on control slash. Okay, it will comment out that line. Next thing I'll do is I'll add a background color to this. So background color will be white. I'll go to the Instagram page. You can see the background on the other part of this on this login page is slightly gray, and this login form has a slight whitish background. So in the body property, I've added a background color of this. So I hope you guys are familiar with RGBA. So this takes in three things. This will be the red coordinates, this will be green, this will be blue, and this is going to be the opacity. Okay, so for our form, the background should be white, and I'll show you. So you can see, I'll just zoom in a bit. You can see that the borders are very sharp, but in the Instagram, wait, I'll just so in the Instagram page, the borders are slightly curved. So you can add that property using border radius. So border radius, if I keep it as 10 pixels, Now you can see the border will have a 10 pixel radius, but let's keep it as 2 pixels for now, because it is, I mean, slightly curved. Okay, just not too sharp, not too curved. Okay, next thing I'll add is I'll add a margin. So margin, if you want to add the margin on top or on the bottom or on the left or on the right, how you can do that is, for example, I'll do margin top and I'll set it to 100 pixels. Okay, now you can see it, the margin of 100 pixels was added here. But obviously we're not going to use this value 100 pixels. Now what if I have to add a margin on the left side, margin left, and it should be, for example, 200 pixels. Now you can see the margin from this side will be 200 pixels, but again, what if you have to write margin right, margin left, margin bottom? So there's a shorthand property for that. What you can do is you can simply write margin. It takes in four things. So it can take four things, 3 or 2 things as well, or a single thing as well. So I'll explain all of them. So if I write 100 pixels only, this will add a margin of 100 pixels from the top, left, right, and bottom. Okay, but what if I want top and bottom to be same and left and right to be same? For that purpose, I can do margin 100 pixels space 200 pixels. What this will do is it will add a 100 pixel margin on top and bottom and 200 pixel margin on left and right. But what if in our case we need margin top to be, for example, if all the 4 values are separate, what you can do is you can do margin, then top, right, bottom, left. Okay, now for example, in this case it will be margin, top will be 0, right will be 0, sorry, right will be 0, bottom will be 10 pixels, and left will also be 0. Now why I am adding a margin bottom of 10 pixels is because I have to separate this box from the other sub mini box. So I'll add a 10 pixel margin here. Next thing I'll do is I'll add a padding. So any answers for this? What basically padding is? Okay, okay, I'll explain it. You can again go to the inspect tools, click on this icon and go here. Okay, so basically margin, okay, I'll explain it in my case only. Margin is basically outside of the borders. Okay, so if I add 10 pixel margin, it will be outside of the border, and if I add a 10 pixel padding, it will be inside of the border. Okay, so it will separate the content from the borders. So margin 10 pixel 0 means margin top and bottom should be 10 pixels, and margin bottom should be, sorry, margin left and right should be 0. Next thing, I'll add a Z index property. I'll explain that as well. Z index basically controls the order or the order of the element. So if I write Z index of 2, this element, okay, I'll explain it when I'll be using Z index 1 to any other element. I'll explain it there. Okay. Now next thing,
So
I'll just quick.
explain padding once again.
Yeah, sure. See, margin. Okay, I'll do that in. Wait, call and box. So this is apart from the clone. You don't need to copy this thing, but I'm just explaining margin and padding. So this is, I've created a div with the class of box, and I've created another div with the class of sub box inside of that. Okay, now I'll just quickly style these two things. So dot box, I'll add a height of 100 pixels, w 200 pixels, and a border of 2 pixels, solid red. I have this box here. Now for the sub box, I'll add a height of 50 pixels, width of 50 pixels, and a border of 2 pixels, solid green. Is it clear? I mean, I've just simply created 2 boxes here, and I've given them some random values of height and width, and I've added a border to both of them. Now basically what margin will do is, so for example, if I add a margin to this box, margin of 10 pixels on all the sides. Now you can see it will be 10 pixels from the top, 10 pixels from the left, 10 pixels from the bottom, and 10 pixels to the left. How you can see that is you can go to inspect elements. You can hover over this box. So the green outline that you are seeing, sorry, this is yellow, right? So the yellow thing that you are seeing is the margin. Okay. Now let's go with padding. So I'll add a padding to this box. I'll add a padding of 10 pixels. I'll save it. I'll go back to my inspect tools. Now, if you hover over this box, so the yellow one is the padding that is outside the border space. Padding will be inside the border space. I hope I'm clear. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll explain one more concept here. I mean, we have created these two boxes. Let's not, I don't want to create them again. So I'll explain the positioning concept. We'll be using two positioning basically. I guess the position relative and position absolute. So what does position relative and absolute mean? Any answers for that, or should I explain it by myself? Okay, let's not waste our time in that. So the position
I guess it
property.
will be for the multiple screens like in laptop view and mobile view.
I'll explain it. So the position property basically specifies the type of positioning method used for an element. Okay, there are 5 different position values. First is the static. Don't worry, I'll explain 2 in brief. I mean 2 in detail and other 3 in brief. Okay, so there are 5 positioning values. First is the static. So what the default position of an element is static. Static elements are not affected by the top, bottom, left, and right properties. Okay, so if I, for example, do top 100 pixels, it will not move anything. It will not move to 100 pixels. Why this is happening? Because its position by default is static. Okay, but for example, the next property is relative. This is really important, so please try to understand it properly. So an element with the position of relative is positioned relative to its normal position. What does that mean? For example, I have this box here, right? So I have this, I have this box here, right? Now, what if I wanted to make it slightly towards the right or slightly towards the bottom? Okay, you can add margin, no doubt you can add the margin, but in that margin, so you can see this margin here, right? In this margin, you cannot place any other elements. Okay, you cannot place any other elements. But what if you just wanted to make a whole of this box and its margin and its padding move towards bottom? How you can do that is you can simply add a position and set it to relative. Now the whole thing, I mean the margin also moved to 100 pixels from the top, the box and the inner box, all of it moved to 100 pixels from the top of the body. Now is it clear what position relative and static differ from, how they differ? So position static, basically you cannot do this there because it has a static position and you cannot apply the top, left, right, or bottom property there. Now by default the relative element is the body wala cheez, okay? You don't need to mention position relative inside the body. By default this is the relative, and if you move anything, I mean I move this 10 pixels from its parents, the parent element. Okay, this, for this the parent element is body, so it moved 100 pixels from the top of the body. Now the next thing is position absolute. Now for example, if I set the position absolute to the child class, now now what will happen is, now if I do top 20 pixels, right 20 pixels, now you can see this thing moved from the right. So I'll do left in order to make it easier. So I'll shift it back to the top. Okay, now basically this box moved 10-20 pixels from the top of its parent element. Now if the parent element has this position of relative, then it will move in relative with this thing. I mean, just like in physics, right? It is moving in with reference, this box is the reference for moving this box. Now, if I remove this position relative from the parent class, now it will move in relative with the body, because body is the default relative element. For example, if I had top of 200 pixels, this box will be shown here. Why? Because it is moving in relation in reference to the body. But if I want to move it in reference with this larger box, so I'll add a position relative to that box. Now it will wait, I'll just change it to 20 pixels. Now it will move related to that box, okay, in reference to that box. Is that clear? It is a really important concept. If you want, I can repeat it, but if it is clear, then I'll move further. So I hope this is clear. Now there is another property. For example, if you write fixed, it will be fixed to that position. Now if I, for example, scroll my page, the box will not move. The box is still going to be there. Okay. I hope that is clear, and I'll just comment it out, and I'll comment it out here as well. Okay, moving further, I guess we reached. So so instead of the blue border, I just want to use this color. So Kunal, you can put this color in the chat box that I've used here. Okay. So next thing, let's go in order. Okay. So I have styled the box. Now I want to style this title. Okay. So the title should look somewhat like this. How I'll do that is I'll select the title. So how I'll do it. So container dot call dot box dot title. Okay. I'll keep its position as a relative because I want the image to move with reference to this this div. Then I'll add a top of 5 pixels and I'll do text align center. What text align center does is it will align all the content to the center. Now let's style the image. So I'll do dot container dot call dot box dot title img. So it is optional. You can use these, hierarchy here, but if you want to select a specific element, it is good to use these. Okay. Now I took these values from the Instagram page. So the width of that logo is 190 pixels and height is 80 pixels. So I'll save it. Now you can see it is looking much better, right? So if I remove the text align center property from this div, it will go to the left. But if I do text align center, it will move to the center of the div. Okay. Moving further, next thing, we will style our login form. So this is going to be our login form component. Let's do it. I will add I'll add a 10 pixel top from here, because then it will not align properly, because this thing is going to change. So how I'll do that is, if I want to change the position of this the second column, how I'm going to do that is I'll do dot container dot call, but I want to move the second call, right? So I'll do dot content. I guess I didn't add that class here, or did I add it? Instead of image, I'll do content here, because I want to separate these images. They have a common class of call, and they'll have a different class of image and content. Okay. So I'll keep its position as relative, because I want to move everything inside of this box in with the relative, with reference to the whole column. And I'll add a top of 10 to 12 pixels. Let's go for 12. Okay. This will basically slightly move it towards the bottom direction. Okay. Now next thing I'll do is now let's work on the form. Okay. So I'll scroll down a bit. Now in order to style the form, I'll select the form. So dot container dot call dot box, and then I'll do dot login form. Okay. So it will also have a position relative. It will have a height of 260 pixels. I'll do again display flex, justify content center, align item center, and I'll do flex direction column. I'll explain what these things will be doing. Next thing, what I'll do is I'll style the label that we added to the input tags. Or okay, we had this class of form content, so let's apply some CSS on that as well. So dot container dot call dot box, and then dot to login form. Then I'll be doing dot form content. I'll add the position relative. I'll add a margin of 5 pixels on top and bottom and 0 towards the left and right, and I'll do top of 22 pixels. Okay. Why I did top 22 pixels is, you can see it is too close to this Instagram logo, but here you can see the difference. So I've added a top of 22 pixels. This will make it, this will add some space here. Okay. Now we have to move this label inside of this input element. Okay. Now how I'm going to do that is, I'm going to select, I'll copy paste this thing here. Form content label. So label ka position, it will be absolute, because when you set the position as absolute to any element, it will not cover the space. Okay, it will act as an inline element, and it will align. It will overlap with the other elements if you don't position them properly. Now, how we can position that is, what I can do is, I'll add a top of 50%. Then I'll do transform, translate. I'll explain this thing. Translate y minus 50%. Then I'll add left of 9 pixels. Next, I'll change the font size and color. Font size will be around 12 pixels. Color. Color will be, any one of you can put this color in the chat box. So color will be this, and then I'll add a transition of 0.3 seconds. Okay. Now what I basically did is, I'll quickly explain. I've set the position to absolute. Now it will move in reference to the form content, because form content ka position I set it to a relative. Now it will move in reference to the form content. Now if you guys are wondering form content kya hai, form content is this div. Okay, so this div, it is moving in reference to this div. Now top of 50% means it will top of 50% means it will move from the top to the 50% of the height of the container. Okay, 50% of the height of the container. I'll explain this part in the boxes that I created here, so that it is a bit more clear. I'll close this thing. Now, what if I want to center this box? I can use flexbox concept, no doubt, but let's use the positioning thing as well. So I'll do position absolute. Now, instead of top 20 pixels, I'll do top 50%, and I'll do left 50%. But it will not be shown at the center. Why? Because top of 50% means from the top of this box, this margin should be 50%. This space should be 50%. But in order to center a div, then it should be 50% from the center of this div, right? So center of this div, okay, I'll make it a circle. So how you can do that is, you can add a border radius of 100%. Then your div will be a circle. So border radius of 100% will convert it to a circle. Now, in order to paste the circle at the center of this rectangle, their centers should coincide, right? Its center should be the center of this thing. But what top 50% does is, from the circumference of this circle, it will move it top 50% and left of 50%. But we have to this will be the radius, right? So I have to move it 50%, that is the radius of the circle, towards the top, and 50% of the radius towards the left. How I can do that is, we can use the transform property here. So transform translate. Okay, so translate basically means it can be one-dimensional movement as well as two-directional, but I'm using the two-dimensional one here. So translate minus 50%. This 50%, please note this down. This 50% is different from this 50%. ये वाला 50% जो है, this is the 50% of the height of the box, but this 50% is the height of the element as well. So this will be 25 pixels. Okay, 25 pixels or minus 50% for moving it in both the directions. Now you can see the box will be in the center. Now what if I wanted to vertically or horizontally align any particular element? So what I'll do is I'll remove the left property. Now instead of translate, I'll remove 150% from here. Now translate, in order to translate it in the x direction, you will write translate x. In order to translate it in the y direction, you will write translate y. So in my case, it will be translate y. Now it will be at the center vertically. Okay, I'll comment these two out. Okay, now let's continue. Now there is another just a second. So what I want is basically whenever I write something inside of it, that is if the input is valid, I want to shift the label towards the top. Okay, so as you can see, I cannot click on this input because I've set the z index of 2 to the box. So what I'll do is I'll go to the code again, and I'll add an order property to this form, and I'll set the order to just a second, I'll to this label because the label is over the input element and I'm not able to select the input element. So what I'll do is I'll do order of -1. Okay, so next thing I'll do is I'll add the CSS for the input now. So I'll copy paste this thing. Instead of label, I'm using input. Now I want its background color to be transparent. I want its width to be 270 pixels, height to be 40 pixels. Background, don't worry, you'll get all the color values in the chat box. So background will be I'll copy paste the values of background color. So background will be this thing. I've added a 1 pixel border to it. I'll add the border radius as well of 3 pixels. I'll also add a padding. So again, it is similar to the margin. So the first one will be padding top, padding right, then padding bottom, then padding left. Then font size, I'll set it to 14 pixels. And I've added a transition of 0.3 seconds. I'll explain what the transition property does when we are going to add any transition. Okay, now you can see our input looks somewhat like this, right? Also, what you can do is you can add pointer events. None. Now you can see that we can easily click on the input tag, and that will not be considered. Okay, if you don't add the pointer events, then whenever you hover over this input, it will not show the icon, and you will not be able to input anything unless you click there. Okay, so our next property is going to be, now whenever user writes anything inside of an input, I want the label to shift towards the top, right? So how we can do that is, first I'll do dot container dot call dot box dot login form input valid. So what this valid pseudo class does is, whenever your input has anything inside of it, this will return true. So this CSS will be applied there. Okay, so I want to remove the padding bottom. Sorry, padding bottom should be set to 0 in this case. I'll copy paste the whole thing. I'll paste it here. Now I showed you the direct descendant property, so I'll use plus label. So whenever the input is valid, so the immediately जो उसके बाद यानी the closest label tag after this input field will have the CSS. So what I want to do is I want to transform, and I want to translate in the y direction. So I'll use the translate y property, and I want to move it to minus 16 pixels. Also, I want to reduce its font. So I'll do font size 10 pixels. Okay. Now you can see if I write anything, it will move up, and if the input is not valid, it will simply come back down. So if I enter my name Muazam, it will move up. If I remove my name, it will come back down. Okay. So yeah, that is for this thing. Now the next thing will be the login button. So what I'll do is I'll do dot container dot call dot box dot login form button. Okay. Now we'll style the button. So button size will be 270 pixels as the input size. Height will be 30 pixels. By default, HTML buttons have a border, so I don't want any border on that. I don't want any outline on that as well. I'll add a border radius as 4 pixels, and I'll add a background color of RGBA 0149246. You'll get these values in the chat box, and the color of the text inside the button should be white. Now I'll save it, and you can see we have the button here. Okay. You guys can copy till then. I mean, I'll give you 2 minutes time. Should I scroll up or down a bit? Do you want to copy any particular part? Okay, let's move further. The button styling is done. Now we just have to style a few more things, and the clone will be completed. Okay. So first thing I'll style this form ending class. So I'll copy the class name from here. I'll do dot container dot call dot box dot, and I'll paste the class name. I'll set its position as relative and its width as 270 pixels, margin top of 20 pixels, and again text align center. Now we have this in the center, and I guess we forgot to write this thing here. Login with Facebook. I hope this is working. Yeah, this is working. Now we have to change its color. So in order to change the color, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this dot container dot box dot form ending. Now if you guys remember, I added an ID of or to that p tag. So what I'll do is I'll write color. I'll add the color to this. Then I want its background color to be white. Text should be at the center, width should be 50 pixels, margin should be 15 and 0. Font size. So for a shortcut, if you have to write font size, what you can do is you can do FSZ, and then you can enter the font size. So FSZ 13 will give me font size of 13 pixels. Then in order to add font weight, you can do FW 500. So this will make the font weight as 500. Now I'll add the line height as well. So the height of the line should be around 15 pixels. And I'll add a Z index of 3. Now Z index of 2 will be under Z index of 3. Okay. If you add Z index of 4 to any element, that will overlap with 3 and overlap with 2. But if you add Z index of 1 to something, that will be under these two elements. Okay. I also want the position to be relative, and it should be block. So what display block does is it will convert it to a block level element. Okay. So that is it for the OR part. Now what we'll do is now we'll create the line. Okay. So I'll copy paste this thing. I'll paste it here. I'll select the line I'll do Z index 1 because I want the line under the OR part. So Z index 1, position absolute, left 50%, translate X this time because we are moving in the horizontal direction. So this will be minus 50% again. I'll add a top of 22 pixels. And I'll keep its width same as the width of our form and the input elements and the login button. Height should be 1 pixels because it is just a line, so height will be 1 pixels, and its background color is going to be this thing. So as you can see, we have a line here. Now I hope I just a second. Okay, so we are here now. What we have to do is, the next thing will be, we have to create this login with Facebook, and we have to change its color to blue, and this hyperlink as well. This should not look like this, and it should be having this color, this font size, and it should be at the center of the page. Okay, now next thing we'll do is I'll use the style property, and I'll change the color of the login with Facebook part. So I'll select it first, ending Facebook, color will be 385185. Cursor should be pointer, so when you hover over it, it should show a pointer there. Font size should be 14 pixels. Font weight 500. This is slightly bolder than rest of the font, that's why I'm adding a font weight. And margin top should be 15 pixels. Okay, now you can see it is a bit bold, and it is having a font weight of font size of less 14 pixels. Now what you can see that the icon and the text are very close to each other, but I want some space between them, and I want the icon to be a bit larger because you can see the icon is larger than the font. What I can do is I can simply copy paste this thing. Now I want to style the icon, so I'll use the I, because you as you can see, we use the where is it? We use the I tag to create the icon. So here what I have to do is I'll add a margin towards the right of 8 pixels. I'll increase its font to 16 pixels because it is slightly bigger than that one. I'll make its position relative because I want to add it 1 pixel on top of it. Now you can see it looks almost similar to this. Okay, so now let's style the forgot password wala cheez. So forgot password, for using that, I'll paste this thing again. Now instead of hash Facebook, I'll use the a anchor tag because the forgot password was wrapped inside the anchor tag. So I'll add a position of relative. I'll add a top margin of 15 pixels. I'll do text decoration none. What text decoration none does is the anchor tags by default have an underline. So what text decoration none does is it will remove that underline. I want its color to be this thing, and I'll copy paste these values as well. So now you can see that this forgot password looks somewhat similar to this thing, right? Now in order to save some time, I'll just copy paste the rest of the CSS and I'll explain it step by step. So yeah, so next thing we'll have to do is we'll have to style this mini box, right? So I'll go to the mini box CSS part. So it begins here. Don't worry about the code. I'll give valuable resources. You'll not be needing this code. Okay, you'll get to learn all this from the resources that we'll be sharing at the end. So in order to create this box, what I've done is I've added a width of 350 pixels. So this width should be same as the width of the larger box. So that was again 350 pixels. I've added a height of 65 pixels. This will add a height of 65 pixels. Next thing, I've added a background, border, and I've done display flex, justify content center, and align item center just to align the content in the center of the page. You can obviously use the positioning concept as well, but in some cases, flexbox is better than positioning, because positioning will not be basically occupy any space. So you'll have to change the other properties as well. Next thing, what I've done is I've changed the font and color of this sign up anchor tag. So I've set the font to 14 pixels and I've added a color. Next thing I've done is for the anchor tag, again I've done text decoration none. What this text decoration none does is it will remove it will basically remove the underline from the anchor tag. Next thing I've done is I'll go to this thing. So for the download section, okay, you guys can see this download section, right? So for the download section, in the paragraph tag, I've set the font size to 14 pixels. As you can see, this is 14 pixels. Next, for the images, again, I want these images to be in line, right? So what I've done is I've done display flex, justify content center. This will align them in the center of their parent element. I'll show it in the inspect element. So you can see this is their parent. Now it will create a flex box. This parent is a flex container, and it will align these two images in the center. I've also mentioned a gap of 10 pixels, so they'll have a gap of 10 pixels in between of them. Okay. Now I've also set the height and width of the image. So this is going to be 135 pixels width and 40 pixels high. Same for the other image as well. Now coming to the footer, how we are going to style the footer is, I've created an unordered list in the HTML. You can see that I've created an unordered list for the footer, which will have all these li tags. I've not mentioned all of them. I've just mentioned a few. So you can see that the second line will not be in our clone because I've mentioned only just the first line of these tags. So basically by default, they'll not be styled like this. I showed now. See, I'll remove this property. And I'll remove this property as well. So by default, you can see the unordered list looks like this, but I want them to be in a single line. For that, I'll add the display flex property. This will make them appear in a single line. Now, in order to remove this dot, you can do list style and set it to none. Okay, when you do list style and set it to none, it will basically remove all those dots. So be it ordered list or unordered list, list style none will basically remove all the dots. Okay, so after that, this is the basic styling. I'm sure you will be able to understand it by yourself. Next are the media queries. This is the last part of our workshop, and we'll wrap up the session after this. So the media queries, what media queries basically does is it will, in order to make your site responsive, you'll have to use these media queries. So basically, if for example, if for now I'll just remove the media queries. So as you can see, as I keep on shrinking the website, you can see the content is going outside of our viewport, right? But this shouldn't happen, right? So in order to handle that, what I can do is I can create a media query. It takes in either max width or min width. For now, I'm just using max width, which means for all the screens which have a maximum width of 900 pixels, which means every screen width which have a width equal to less than equal to 900 pixels, the CSS will apply on them. So basically, you cannot style this image properly. So for mobile phones, what Instagram has done is it just removes the image from the DOM. Okay, so when the width is less than 900 pixels, the image will not be shown and it will get disappeared. Okay, so for that, what I've done is I've selected the image using hash image, and I've set the display property to none. This will basically remove it from the DOM. Okay, next thing, what I've done is the container's min height was 990 view heights, right? But when this screen gets smaller, I wanted it to be less than 90 because it was overflowing in the vertical direction. So I've changed its min height to 80 view heights. Now it will only be covering this part. You can see it from this thing. Now it is only covering 80% of the screen, and I've left the 20% of the screen for the footer. Okay. Also, you can see I've made some basic changes. I've removed the border from these because Instagram is removing the border as well. See, the border gets removed. You can see in the Instagram clone as well. If I shrink the screen and the border gets removed of this, the box border is removed. Same happens for our clone as well. Okay. So if you guys have no doubts, this is all about today's workshop. And if you guys don't have any doubts, we'll continue with the task allocation and all. So do you guys have any doubts? Can I get a yes or no in the chat box? Do you want me to repeat any property or any property that you didn't understand?
So there was one property where you mentioned about the 50%, where you were
Yeah.
showing the square and square. So
Yeah.
in the second one where you
Mhm.
showed there was 50%, but you said there was only 25. I guess
Wait.
there was, yeah.
Mhm.
You understood what I'm asking? It's about that. The second wala 50% tha. Usme they were showing like 25%. I guess there was change. There was 25 MB.
No. Wait, I lost that code. Don't worry. If you don't have any other doubts, I'll explain that again quickly. Okay. So basically, what I'll do is I'll create another box here. So I'll do dot box dot sub box. Okay. It's okay. You guys can ask doubts. There's no problem with that. So I'll just use that styling again. I'd set its position to relative. I'll put its width to 100 pixels, height to 100 pixels, border of 2 pixels, solid red. We have the box here. I'll change it to 200 so that you can get a proper understanding of what is basically happening. Now for the sub box, I'll do position absolute. Did you understand the position absolute concept?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so first I'll just add 100 pixel height and width and a border of 2 pixels solid green. Okay, I'll also keep the border radius as 100%, so I get a circle. Okay, yeah, so okay, you can just repeat it out now.
Yeah, so once you were showing that from the top there was a 50% difference.
Yeah, okay,
So
let's go step by step. I'll add a top of 50%.
Yeah.
Sorry, 50%.
So it was
Now,
but while you were showing that later on, once you were changing it, so it came in the center, but still in your code you had written 50%. That was my doubt, how it came like that. Like right now, it's in the bottom. Yeah.
No, it is not in the bottom. Basically, देखो ये क्यों हो रहा है? What is 50% of 200 pixels? 100 pixels, right?
100 pixels, yeah.
What is the height of this box, sub box? 100 pixels, right? So if I'm adding 100 pixel, 50% from the top, it will go to the bottom. I'll change it so that, I mean, you don't get confused. Is it clear now? It is the 50% of this box ki jo bhi margin hai. For example, in this case, it is 150 pixels. That will be the distance from this point to this point. But in order, in order to for the circle to be at the center, the distance from the top and the center should be 150 pixels. Okay, is that clear? Why it should be from this point to this point?
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to get it up by the radius of that box, what you can do is you can do transform. Now, can you answer that question? Do I need to do transform X or transform Y? Sorry, translate X or translate Y? In which direction do I have to move this box?
Translate Y.
Y, right? Because it is moving in the Y direction. So I'll do translate Y. How much do I have to move it? It is going to move 50% of this height, not the 50% of that height, but the 50% of this height. Now, I'll do minus 50%. Now it is in the center but only in the vertical direction because we're working with the y-axis. But what if you have to position it in the horizontal direction? I'll show it separately. Okay, we'll use two separate transforms for that. So I'll do left of 50%. Now the difference between this point and this point will be 150. Sorry, I'll change this as well. The difference between this and this point will be 150 pixels. Okay.
Yeah.
Why? Because it is moving to from this point, it is moving left to 150 pixels. But again, it should be from the center. So instead of translate y, you can use translate. It takes in two arguments. First is the x, and second one is the y part. Okay. So now it will move 50% of this distance will it will move in the x direction, and 50% of this distance in the y direction. If it's still not clear, I can explain it again, but if it is, then it is.
No, it's clear. Thank you so much.
Okay.